Welcome back to Tales of Kind Souls, where real lives and fictional echoes intertwine, and every story reminds us that even in the darkest hours, courage and humanity can shine brighter than fear. She was just a kid in Seat 12F. At least, that's how anyone would have described her at first glance. Barely 17, skinny arms wrapped around a faded backpack, sneakers tapping nervously against the floor. Her hair was pulled into a tight ponytail, more out of practicality than style, and the oversized hoodie she wore seemed like a shield against the world. She didn't look like someone about to make history. She didn't look like someone who carried secrets heavy enough to change the course of hundreds of lives. The flight was routine. Passengers shuffled down the aisle, filling the rows with the same mixture of boredom, chatter, and the rustling of carry-on bags. Businessmen in suits thumbed their phones until the last possible moment. A mother soothed a crying toddler. An older couple debated whether they should have taken the earlier connection. And in the middle of it all, there was her, Seat 12F by the window. No one paid her much attention. Why would they? To most, she was just a teenager flying alone. Nervous maybe because her fingers gripped the armrest a little too tightly. Restless because her leg bounced with unspent energy. Harmless, invisible. But invisibility was her greatest weapon. At exactly 18 minutes after takeoff, the cabin lights dimmed to their usual cruising glow. The captain announced the altitude, the weather, and the time of arrival. Polite applause, then silence. That was when she leaned back, closed her eyes, and listened, not to the hum of the engines or the chatter around her, but to the faint crackle in her ear. No one noticed the tiny earpiece, carefully hidden beneath her hair. No one noticed the faint movement of her lips as she responded, barely above a whisper, "Call sign." "Maelstrom, copy." Her heartbeat steadied as she spoke the words that felt like slipping into another identity. Maelstrom, a name given to her by people who didn't care that she was young, only that she was fast, precise, and willing. They had trained her for months, maybe years. It was hard to separate time anymore. And now, sitting in 12F, surrounded by strangers, she was on her first live assignment. The irony was almost cruel. The people sitting inches away thought she was just another kid. But her real purpose on this flight had nothing to do with the destination. The first sign of trouble came at 19:02, when the flight attendant noticed a man in the rear of the plane behaving strangely. He stood too long in the aisle, muttering under his breath, glancing over his shoulder as though expecting someone. Then he reached into his jacket. The attendant smiled politely, trying to calm him, but her voice trembled as she asked him to return to his seat. That was when she saw it. The glint of metal. A trigger. Her training took over. She slipped her hand inside her hoodie, pulling out what looked like a simple phone. But it wasn't. The device was custom-made, slim enough to go through security unnoticed, yet powerful enough to connect her to the network that waited on the other end. She pressed a button. A voice crackled. "Maelstrom, report." Her voice was steady, though her hands were shaking. "Subject at 24A, possible armed. Requesting clearance." There was silence for a beat, then, "You're cleared. Contain if necessary. Collateral risk assessment is minimal. Proceed." She closed her eyes for half a second. Collateral. That word haunted her. To the people on the other end, it was just numbers, calculations. If something went wrong, lives lost would be acceptable losses. But sitting here, surrounded by the very people who might become statistics, she felt the weight of their lives pressing on her chest. The man at 24A stood again, louder this time. "Everyone stay in your seats." His voice cracked with desperation, his hand gripping the weapon now fully visible. Gasps filled the cabin. The mother clutched her toddler. Someone cried out. A businessman fumbled for his phone before realizing it was useless at 30,000 feet. Panic spread like fire. But in 12F, she stayed still. Her fingers tapped the armrest in a coded rhythm, a signal she had practiced countless times. Her eyes locked onto the man's reflection in the window. Every muscle in her body tightened, ready. She had a plan. But she also had doubts. Was she really prepared? Was it fair that a 17-year-old had to carry the burden of a mission like this? Her instructors had drilled into her that hesitation kills, but hesitation was human. And right now, humanity was surging inside her, stronger than the cold calculations of her call sign. The man shouted again, demanding the cockpit. The flight attendants tried to reason, their voices trembling. Passengers froze, terrified. She unbuckled her seatbelt slowly, quietly. Every movement had to be invisible. 1 step, 2 steps. Her sneakers barely made a sound against the carpeted floor. "Maelstrom," the voice in her ear said, "you are cleared to neutralize. Do not wait." Her breath caught. She was not a soldier. She was not an assassin. She was a kid in 12F, and yet every eye in the cabin, whether they knew it or not, was depending on her. She moved closer, weaving through rows. The man's voice grew louder, his hands shaking. He wasn't just angry, he was terrified. That detail hit her harder than any training exercise. Terrorists were supposed to be cold, calculated, but this man looked desperate, like he was being forced. She froze. Something wasn't right. "Maelstrom, take the shot," the voice ordered. Her hand hovered over the device. 1 button, and the signal would release a small charge designed to incapacitate the target. Non-lethal, but still brutal. 1 press and it would all be over, but she couldn't, not yet. Not without knowing why this man looked like he was about to cry. She whispered into the mic. "Stand by, he's not what you think, static." Then an impatient reply. "You're compromised. Do it now." Her eyes met the man's. For a fraction of a second she saw not a threat, but a human being. His lips trembled. His knuckles whitened on the grip of his weapon. And beneath it all, his eyes screamed one thing: "Help me, listen to me." She shouted suddenly, her voice cutting through the chaos. Every head turned toward her, even the man. "You don't want to do this." The cabin fell into stunned silence. Passengers gaped at her. A flight attendant gasped. The man's hand shook so violently that the weapon clattered against the seat. "Put it down," she said, her voice steady, strong, older than her years. "I know they're making you." "I know you don't want this." The man's face crumpled. His knees buckled, and he sank into the aisle, sobbing. The weapon slid away, harmless now. The cabin erupted, not in panic this time, but in disbelief. People shouted, whispered, clung to one another. The attendants rushed to secure the weapon, restrain the man, reassure the passengers, and in the middle of it all, she stood frozen. Her heart pounded in her ears. Her body shook with the adrenaline crash. In her earpiece, the voice was sharp, furious. "Maelstrom, what have you done?" She reached up slowly, removed the earpiece, and dropped it into a half-empty soda cup. With one decisive motion, she crushed it under her sneaker. The faint crackle died instantly. For the first time since the mission began, she felt free. The rest of the flight passed in a blur. Passengers whispered about the brave girl who had stopped an armed man. Flight attendants thanked her, though they didn't really understand what she had done. The man, now restrained, wept quietly in the back, repeating something over and over in a language most couldn't understand. When the plane finally landed, law enforcement swarmed the cabin. Questions were shouted, statements taken. She kept her story simple. She saw a man in distress. She spoke to him. He gave up. Nothing more, but she knew the truth was heavier. She wasn't just a kid in 12F. She was Maelstrom, a call sign meant to erase her humanity, a weapon disguised as a child. And yet, in that critical moment, she had chosen not to be a weapon. She had chosen to be human. Maybe that was the bravest choice of all. As she walked down the jet bridge, blending into the sea of passengers, she knew one thing for certain. Her story wasn't over. The network she had defied would come looking for her. They didn't forgive disobedience, but for now, she was free. Free to be a kid. Free to decide who she really was. And free to believe that even in the darkest skies, a soul, even one hidden behind a call sign, could still choose kindness. Because sometimes, the smallest act of humanity is what saves us all.